All right, so you're thinking about going for a gas service technician interview. Smart move. It's a field that's in high demand, and we're here to equip you with the tools you need to ace it. We've got a ton of resources from RoleCatcher, stuff like career guides, sample interview questions. They even have AI that can help you tailor your answers to specific jobs. Pretty neat, huh? But before we get into the nitty-gritty of interview prep, let's step back for a sec and really get a handle on what this job actually involves.
It's a lot more than just, fixing a leaky stove. Gas service technicians do it all. Installation, maintenance, repair, for all sorts of gas-powered equipment. You're talking residential furnaces and water heaters, even those complex systems you see in industrial buildings.
So it's a pretty diverse role then.
Oh, absolutely. One day you might be working in someone's home, and the next you're in a factory, figuring out a maze of pipes. It's a dynamic field for sure.
And that's where RoleCatcher's career guide comes in handy, right? It gives a good rundown of those different work environments you could find yourself in.
You got it. And it really emphasizes the importance of safety, which is huge in this job. You're dealing with potentially hazardous materials, so understanding and following those regulations is absolutely essential.
Speaking of safety, let's jump into some of those interview questions where you can really highlight your knowledge in that area. I'm willing to bet you'll get asked something like, how do you make sure all those gas connections are secure and leak-free?
That's a common one. And it's all about showing them you're meticulous. Don't just give them a vague answer. Walk them through your process, step by step. Talk about using a leak detector, applying soapy water to check for bubbles, conducting pressure tests. Show them you're thorough and don't cut corners.
Right. It's about showing you're not going to mess around when it comes to safety.
Exactly. And they might even follow up with something like, how do you educate your customers about gas safety in their own homes? That's a chance to show you're not just concerned about your own safety, but about the safety of everyone around you.
And that's where RoleCatcher's AI can really help you out. It can actually recommend specific safety protocols that are relevant to the industry. Stuff you can work right into your answer. It's like having a safety expert in your pocket.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Okay, another question that comes up a lot is, tell me about your experience with installing and maintaining gas appliances.
That one feels a bit more open-ended. What's the best way to approach it?
Think storytelling. Don't just rattle off a list of appliances. Instead, pick one specific project, maybe a really tough installation or a complex repair, and walk the interviewer through your process. Tell them about the problem, how you diagnosed and solved it, and what you learned along the way.
So it's like giving them a sneak peek into your problem-solving skills.
Exactly. And be ready for a follow-up. Like, tell me about a time you had to think outside the box on the job. That's your chance to really demonstrate your creativity and how you can adapt.
And RoleCatcher's AI can actually analyze the job description to figure out what kind of outside-the-box thinking they're looking for.
Right. Now let's switch gears and talk about a question that focuses on staying up to date. Something like, how do you keep up with the latest changes in technology and regulations?
That's where you show them you're a lifelong learner, always looking to improve.
Absolutely. Talk about any trade journals you read, online forums you're part of, manufacturer training you've done, anything that shows you're actively staying current.
Because let's face it, this industry is always changing.
Yeah, a good interviewer might even ask something like, what's a new trend in gas technology that's exciting you? That's where RoleCatcher's AI can be really helpful. It can pull up the latest news from the industry so you can give a smart and interesting answer.
So, no getting caught off guard. All right, let's talk about the dreaded question that everyone hates. Tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult customer and how you handled it.
Oh yeah, we've all been there. The key is to stay calm, focus on solving the problem, and show them you can de-escalate things.
Don't sweat it, right?
Right. Pick a situation where you successfully dealt with a tough customer, explain what happened, outline the steps you took to resolve it, and emphasize the importance of communication and empathy.
And be prepared for that follow-up. Like, how do you balance company policy with keeping the customer happy?
Good point. RoleCatcher's AI can actually give you some insights into conflict resolution techniques that are specific to this field, which can be super useful when you're putting together your response.
So you're not just making it up as you go along.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about time management, which is so important in this kind of job. You're bound to get a question like, how do you prioritize and manage your workload on a daily basis?
This is your time to show off your organizational skills. Explain how you decide what tasks are urgent versus important, how you use scheduling software, and how you communicate with dispatch to keep everything running smoothly.
It's all about showing them you're not just running around with your head cut off.
Right. Precisely. And be ready for them to ask about on-call responsibilities. RoleCatcher's AI can help you structure your answer to emphasize efficiency and a proactive mindset when you're dealing with those unexpected calls.
That's definitely reassuring. All right, let's move on to a more technical question. Describe a time when you had to troubleshoot and solve a really complex gas service issue.
Here's your chance to show off your analytical skills and that technical know-how. Pick a situation that really highlights your ability to think critically and systematically.
So basically walk them through the whole process.
Yes, exactly. Detail the problem, explain how you diagnosed it, outline the steps you took to fix it, and don't forget to mention what you learned from that experience. This is your time to shine and show them you can handle the tough stuff.
And RoleCatcher's AI can help you frame those technical skills in a way that matches what this specific job you're interviewing for is looking for.
Exactly. Now, another safety question you might get is, how do you make sure you're following all the necessary safety protocols when working with gas?
Safety's a big deal in this field, so I bet they'll want to hear about your commitment to it.
Absolutely. Go beyond the basics and mention specific safety protocols. Things like using personal protective equipment, following lockout-tagout procedures, and ensuring you have proper ventilation.
Now, some people outside the field might not know what all those terms mean. Could you break them down a little?
Of course. PPE is basically your safety gear, things like goggles, gloves, and respirators to protect you from potential hazards. Lockout-tagout procedures are how you isolate energy sources before you start working on equipment to prevent it from accidentally starting up. And good ventilation is critical when you're working with gas to prevent those dangerous fumes from building up.
That makes sense. So it's not just about saying the words, it's about explaining what they mean.
Right. And be prepared for a follow-up that puts you in a specific situation, like, what would you do if you saw a coworker cutting corners on safety procedures?
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it can be. But RoleCatcher's AI can provide some relevant OSHA guidelines and give you tips on how to address safety concerns professionally and effectively.
Okay, let's talk about being flexible, which is crucial in any job, but especially in gas service, where you're bound to run into unexpected problems. How would you approach a question like, how do you deal with unexpected changes or challenges during a service call?
This is all about showing your adaptability and problem-solving skills. Think of a time when you encountered a surprise obstacle, maybe a part that was delayed, a problem you didn't see coming, or a change in the scope of the work. Explain how you adapted to overcome that challenge.
So it's all about showing them you can roll with the punches.
Exactly, and be ready for them to ask something like, tell me about a time a job took longer than you expected and how you handled it. RoleCatcher's AI can give you tips on how to show off your adaptability and problem-solving skills in your answer.
Great. Now let's touch on professionalism, which is obviously important when you're dealing with customers. How would you approach a question like, how do you stay professional when interacting with customers?
This is all about those soft skills. Show them you're a good listener, you communicate clearly, and you can stay respectful even when things get stressful.
Especially when things get stressful.
Exactly. Pick a situation where you handled a tough customer interaction with grace and professionalism.
And be prepared for that follow-up, like, how would you break bad news to a customer, something like a really expensive repair?
That's a good one. RoleCatcher's AI can actually offer some ways to emphasize those customer service skills and show how you can deliver difficult news with empathy and understanding.
Okay, last question for this part of our deep dive. How do you make sure you're providing top-notch service to your customers?
Here's your chance to show you go above and beyond. Talk about doing thorough inspections, providing clear explanations, and following up with customers to make sure they're happy.
It's those little things that really make a difference.
Absolutely, and be prepared for them to ask, what does customer satisfaction mean to you? RoleCatcher's AI can give you some insights on exceeding customer expectations and creating that loyalty, which is so important in this field.
Wow, we've already covered a lot. But there's still more to come in part 2 of this deep dive. We'll be diving even deeper into the world of gas service technicians, exploring career paths, certifications, and what this exciting field looks like as it continues to evolve.
Welcome back. We're diving back into getting you prepped for that gas service technician interview.
We've gone over some pretty tough questions in the first part, but let's shift gears a little bit and look at the overall career path.
Yeah, it's important to see the big picture, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So where does someone usually get started in this field?
Apprenticeships. They're like the gold standard for anyone who wants to become a gas service technician.
RoleCatcher's Career Guide talks about that.
Yep, it does. Apprenticeships are great because you get hands-on experience and classroom learning, all while working with seasoned professionals and building a solid foundation.
So it's not just about hitting the books.
Nope, not at all. You'll be shadowing those experienced techs, helping out with installations and repairs, and taking on more and more responsibility as you go.
Makes sense. Now, what about moving up in your career? What are some paths gas service technicians can take?
Oh, there are tons of options. This is definitely not a dead-end job. With enough experience and some extra certifications, you can move into a supervisory role, specialize in something like high-efficiency boilers, or even start your own business.
Wow, that's exciting. So there's definitely room for growth and specializing in this field.
For sure. Plus, it's an industry that's constantly changing. There's always some new technology or technique popping up.
Which brings us back to the importance of never stop learning.
Right. Staying on top of those industry trends is key if you want to move up in your career and make sure you're giving your customers the best service.
And speaking of showcasing those skills, RoleCatcher's Career Guide actually suggests putting together a portfolio, which isn't something you usually think of for trade jobs.
It's becoming more common, though. A portfolio lets you really highlight your experience and what you can do.
So what kind of things should you put in there?
Definitely pictures of your work, showing different installations and repairs you've done. Testimonials from happy customers are great too. They really show how professional you are and what your customer service is like.
It's like, don't just tell me, show me.
Exactly. And never underestimate good old-fashioned networking. Go to industry events, join those professional organizations. Those face-to-face interactions can open doors to opportunities you wouldn't have even thought of.
Great point. Okay, let's get back to those interview questions. We touched on safety in the last part, but let's go a little deeper with a what would you do kind of question. Something like, imagine you show up at a customer's house and their furnace isn't working. Walk me through your troubleshooting process.
Here's where you show off those analytical skills and how you approach problems step by step. Start by getting all the info from the customer, what's happening, when it started, if anything's changed recently.
Kind of like a detective gathering clues.
I like that. Then you can explain how you'd visually inspect the furnace, looking at the pilot light, the burners, any signs of damage. And of course, check the thermostat to see if it's set right and working correctly.
And don't forget to mention those safety checks you do along the way.
Oh, absolutely. Safety first, always. You could talk about checking for gas leaks, making sure there's proper ventilation, and disconnecting the power before you start working on any electrical parts.
So it's about showing them you know what you're doing and you're safety conscious.
Exactly. And a really good interviewer might follow up with something like, what are some common reasons furnaces fail and how would you figure out what's wrong? That's where knowing those gas heating systems inside and out is really important.
And that's where RoleCatcher's AI can be a lifesaver, right? It can help you brush up on those potential problems and how to fix them.
Absolutely. It can also give you insights into those industry best practices for troubleshooting and repairs, so your answers are aligned with those current standards.
Okay, let's tackle another one of those tough questions. What do you do if you have to give a customer bad news, like a really expensive repair?
That can be a tricky one, but it comes with the territory. The key is to be understanding, be upfront, and focus on solutions.
So no sugarcoating, but also don't make it sound like the end of the world.
Right. Start by acknowledging that it's frustrating for them, then explain the situation clearly and honestly. If there are different repair options, talk about those and the pros and cons of each, and of course, be upfront about the costs involved.
So they have all the information they need to make a decision.
Exactly. And emphasize that you're committed to finding the best solution for their needs and their budget. A smart interviewer might ask, how do you balance being honest with keeping the customer happy?
That's a tough one to navigate.
It is. But RoleCatcher's AI can give you some ideas on how to deal with those situations, focusing on how to build trust and keep those customer relationships positive, even when you're giving them bad news.
That's good to know. Okay, let's finish up this part with a question that lets you show off your dedication to customer service. Something like, tell me about a time you went above and beyond for a customer.
This is your time to shine. Choose a story that shows how you go that extra mile. Maybe you stayed late to finish a repair before it got really cold, or you went out of your way to track down a hard-to-find part for an older appliance.
It's all about showing that you're not just there to punch in and punch out, that you actually care about helping people.
Exactly. And a good interviewer might ask, what does customer loyalty mean to you, and how do you build it?
That's a great question.
It is. And RoleCatcher's AI can give you some really valuable insights on how to build those lasting relationships with customers. Things like communication, follow-up, and going beyond what's expected.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into how to get ready for that gas service technician interview.
We've covered a lot, from those technical skills to customer service to what your career path could look like.
Now let's wrap things up with some final tips to help you really stand out from everyone else.
It's not just about what you know, but also how you present yourself.
Absolutely. So let's start with a question that always seems to trip people up. Tell me about your weaknesses.
Ah, the dreaded weakness question. It's all about being honest and showing that you know yourself.
I've heard people say you should try to turn a strength into a weakness. Like saying, I'm a perfectionist.
Yeah.
But that seems a little cheesy, doesn't it?
It can sound like you're not being genuine. Instead, pick something you're actually working on improving and tell them what you're doing about it. Maybe you're trying to get better at managing your time, or maybe you're working on communicating more concisely.
So it's all about showing them that you're always looking to grow and learn.
Exactly. And a smart interviewer might follow up with something like, how has this weakness affected your work in the past, and what did you learn from it? That's where you can show them you can reflect on your experiences and, learn from your mistakes.
And RoleCatcher's AI can help you frame your answer so that it highlights those self-awareness and problem-solving skills.
Right. Now let's talk about a question that almost always comes at the end of an interview. Do you have any questions for me?
This is your chance to really shine. Not by, showing off, but by showing that you're genuinely interested in the company and the job.
Absolutely. Don't just say no. Have a few well-thought-out questions ready. You could ask about the company culture, what kind of training they offer, or what some of the challenges of the role are. It's also a chance to emphasize that you're interested and excited about the opportunity.
So it's about leaving a good impression.
And remember, a little research goes a long way. RoleCatcher's AI can help you gather some info about the company and even the interviewer, so you can personalize your questions and build a connection.
That's a great tip. Okay, so what happens after the interview? Should you just sit around and wait?
Definitely not. Always send a thank you note to the person who interviewed you. Restate your interest and mention a couple of key points from your conversation.
It's a small thing, but it shows that you're professional and appreciate their time.
And if you don't hear back right away, don't worry. You can follow up politely after a reasonable amount of time.
It never hurts to be persistent.
That's right. And even if this particular interview doesn't lead to a job offer, remember it's still a valuable experience. You've sharpened your skills, gotten more confident, and learned more about the industry.
So you're one step closer to getting that dream job.
Exactly. And with RoleCatcher's AI in your corner, you'll be ready to tackle any interview that comes your way.
So, to wrap things up for our listeners, remember that you're not just prepping for an interview. You're stepping into a skilled trade that's in high demand. You can make a real difference in people's lives, making sure they're safe and comfortable.
And never forget, this is an industry that's always evolving. The best gas service technicians are the ones who keep learning and adapt to new challenges.
So stay sharp, keep that positive attitude, and don't forget all those helpful tools from RoleCatcher. Good luck.